welcome to Initiate Talks Innovation. And today I'm delighted to be speaking with Rune Kirt, CEO and partner of Kirt Thomsen, a visual R&D consultancy, and Dr. Ask Jensen, co-founder and COO of the startup Seaborg Technologies, who are partnering on an exciting project to develop an innovative energy storage system. Rune, if I can start with you, obviously within the innovation ecosystem, there's recognized players are the incubators, accelerators, startups, VCs, etc. But it's a much more complex picture than that. So where does an organization such as Kirt and Thomsen kind of fit in within that ecosystem?
Yeah, so to elaborate, you could say essentially we are a design and innovation consultancy. In that scene of a very technical innovation, energy innovation, it's more rare, you could say, to see the design and innovation. So you could say we fit a bit in where you see the traditional STEM, like science, technology, engineering, math. Then we extend the sentence into STEAM, you could say, adding an A, arts, so the more creative forces and the open mindset from that world. So that's basically what we try to add into this world, and with a more holistic mindset, and also the tools of, you could say, storytelling and being very visual thinkers. So we put meaning into these R&D projects, innovation projects, and so on.
Great. You could almost say you make them sort of the technology a little bit more sexier, I suppose.
Yeah, you could say that. So it's trying to. So sometimes we say that we help bridge the gap between silos and in between multiple departments or multiple stakeholders and big complex projects. So that's basically what we're trying to do, right? By making the projects more appealing or more sexy in that way. So whether it's internally in the project teams, that it becomes more appealing and more understandable, working this visual way that a picture or image says more than 1,000 words. So yeah, you can communicate much more in a much faster way that you would normally do. But also the same if you approach external stakeholders in the process, whether that's investors or it's collaboration partners and so on. So that you could say sexiness into the solution, but without losing the detail. I think that's important as well, that we have this a micro macro perspective, so that we keep the overview and again the sexiness, the appealingness of the solution, but we also maintain the deepness and the micro level to the component and the detailed one, so you don't lose, you could say, the engineers or the more technical people, for instance. So yeah, I think, and also the you could say the way of working very explorative. So not just here there's a problem, here there's a solution, but doing it in a very iterative way, a very explorative way. I think is a key way of working as well. Yeah.
Great. And Ask, before we kind of move on to talking about the project in kind of more detail, I mean, from your perspective as a startup, kind of how important has been and is the partnership with Kirt and Thomsen in terms of kind of helping you progress down the route to hopefully making commercialization a reality?
So I'm glad you asked, because we're a company that's been hiring chemists and physicists and engineers from all around the world. I mean, we're a really tech-heavy company, and I think that allows us to generate a lot of good ideas. But to communicate those ideas and actually get them into a project, it's been really healthy working with Rune and the team. I think one thing is using a lot of time to actually find out what are the good ideas and what are not. How big is the potential? What are the risks? And how do we get this to work? We have some guys who are also good at seeing the business side of it, but getting to how do we actually communicate this and how do we explain it, and challenging those views. I mean, what are actually good ideas when you get closer to a client or closer to a customer? That's always healthy, and it's been really fruitful. I think the work we've done together so far.
Oh, that's great to hear. And now, as I say, let's switching to the project that you're both partnering on. So Seaborg are developing a long duration energy storage system. And as I understand it, it utilizes molten salt. Obviously, that's an existing technology. So can you try and just explain to us kind of, what are you doing different or new with this technology?
Yes. So I'm gonna give you just a short background story, basically, on the company, because so the company was founded by 5 physicists to begin with, and we actually started a company doing something completely different that we're still doing, developing a fundamental different type of nuclear power called a molten salt reactor. We hope that it's a technology that can change the view we have on nuclear power, because it can come with a lot of benefits, hopefully be a truly sustainable energy source for the future. But the key to doing that was being very good at working with these guys. It might not be easy to see, but this is a fluoride crystal, and it's just one of the molten salts, or one of the salt types that we work with. So salt is not salt in the sense that you have a table salt, right? But it's a chemical salt. So you have different types, and it's basically a rock until you heat it. We had to control these salts and the chemistry in them while they were heated and molten. And especially some of these salts have been quite corrosive. But the thing with them is that they're also excellent at storing energy. I mean, you can store tremendous amounts of energy in these salts when they're heated. They have a very large heat capacity, as you call it. So we've been hiring chemists from around the world that are specialized in this branch of the chemistry called electrochemistry. And at one point we realized that we thought there was simply a hole, that people hadn't looked too much into this because they thought the corrosion was difficult to control. Simply that the structural materials you built your energy storage out of couldn't handle these salts. But a lot has happened since this was really tried the last time, and we were in a position where we felt like we could actually do differently and manage to get this working. So that's how it started, and the idea is basically to build containers with a liquid salt that can store a lot of heat. So when there is excess electricity or even potentially excess heat, that can be stored. And then it could be delivered back to the grid either as electricity or potentially as heat for district heating or other purposes later on when you need it. And might even be that we deliver continuously, but just store with a high frequency, because it's quite easy due to the high heat capacity. You can even store a lot of energy within quite short times. So that has been the basic idea. I mean, Denmark is a country full of wind, right? We get a lot of wind here, and we get a lot of wind power. And we want to push that so we can actually utilize all of that wind energy when it's needed somewhere else, either as electricity or even as heating. And there's been a lot of technologies developed already. And I think we're seeing a pattern where we realize we just need, I mean, the amount of species of technologies we need to actually make this transition is large. And we think we found a special use case here that there's a big need for, and where there's no technology so far.
Great. And then obviously one of the challenges facing the whole energy storage sector is all about getting to scale. And so kind of where do you see that your kind of technology, containerized based technology, really has an opportunity there to get to scale really quite straightforwardly? So
I think the interesting part about molten salts is that they are actually already used, say, there's this thing called thermal solar power. You have facilities in Spain and in California and around the world where you have mirrors basically that concentrate the salt on containers with salt. It's a different salt, but it's not too, I mean, many of the principles are the same. And there's already storage. Now, the difference between the salts that we use and the nitrogen salts that are typically used is that these salts have higher heat capacity, can store more energy, but they are corrosive. So we are really focusing on developing the corrosion control mechanisms. So in that sense, there's a high degree of innovation for a very small part of the system, the crucial part for a small part, because the rest of it is not too different from what we already use today. So our hope and the way we've been working is trying to do as little innovation on the big part of the system, but only do it on the crucial part that will allow the new technology, basically. And I think dialogue with Rune and the team has been interesting in that sense, because you're forced to look into the use cases. What are the different use cases that we actually think this technology fits into, and get challenged on that. Is it actually the right path that we're pursuing? Is it the right size? Do people want the gigawatt storage in major cities, or is this something for the countryside? And is it for small scale industries that can actually use the heat, or is it big scale energy storage?
Brilliant. Oh, that's fantastic. Now, Rune, turning back to you, I know you are a great supporter and advocate of collaboration, and just the way the two of you have been talking, I mean, clearly the project is showing a great example of kind of collaboration in action, and in action very successfully. On a more general scale, I mean, or more general level, why do you believe collaboration is so important for innovation development, and obviously in particular in kind of relation to the transition that's going on in our energy system at the moment?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking this question. Because I definitely think collaboration is a key in the energy transition that we're facing, and it's probably not only me that is an advocate for that, but a lot of people and politicians and industries are talking about it. Especially if you take the term sector coupling, which of course is meant in a more technical way, but it means that different sectors need to collaborate together. Meaning different competences with different background, different innovation cycles, you could say, different ways of looking at the innovation. So in that sense, collaboration becomes very essential for these things to succeed, because you simply need to understand each other, you could say. And you could say if the system was fairly simple, then maybe this collaboration would be also fairly simple. But the energy system is quite complex, and especially when you start to combine all these different sectors and silos and technologies and use cases, then it becomes extremely complex, right? So I think that's where collaboration is key for these things to succeed. And when you bring in, for instance, like the element of communication in this collaboration, or alignment, you could also call it alignment, then you would get a better collaboration. But also, for instance, introducing shared languages or shared ways of communicating together. And I think that's not only collaboration in industry, you could say, as trying to bring new technology to the market, but it's actually also you could say commitment in a broader scale, because I think that's also when you look in collaboration towards the energy transition. Collaboration is also to get the whole society with all levels, with all different sectors, exceed the energy sector, get all the different domains of technologies and society activities committed to this green transition, because it affects everybody, as we've seen in France with the yellow vest, and we also see some resistance, for instance, in the US, and now also in in some of the European countries with the COVID situation and whether we should invest in this or not. So I think it's important to get this commitment with all these levels, and that people can see a benefit for their own company, for their own profession, for their own families, wherever they are. And that's where collaboration is key for these things to succeed. And yeah, I think that there's another element as well for the collaboration, which is speed, because speed is of essence when we talk about the green transition, but it's a fragile science, right? Because if you're pushing things too fast, you might get bad solutions, or you might not get this commitment as I just spoke about. So then you would maybe get the opposite result of the green transition. You would maybe get a even blacker society, so to say. So I think speed is of essence, but it needs to be done in the right way, with the right collaboration, with the right tools of introducing this. And again, yeah, that's where we introduce some of the tools from our field, but I think there's a lot of other fields and professions that will actually join in this green transition. When we look in the coming years, it's not only the A, as I say in STEAM, the arts that will be introduced. I think there will also be other domains of the more hard technicians, or other people that need to be retrained, or other things that need to be integrated in this green transition. Yeah, so it's again, we need people to collaborate to gain this speed and to gain success. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, as everything, nothing is straightforward, isn't it? And you're right, it is a very fine line that we need to walk in order to kind of be successful, but bring everyone along with us. You're absolutely right. I feel that I can't finish this interview without asking a question about kind of the current situation we all find ourselves in. Bear with me. So I'm going to ask both of you to respond. So I'll ask if you can go first. That would be great. So yes, we are finding ourselves in a challenging time, and the innovation sector is no different. So, you know, we hear reports of like sluggish deal flows, funding rounds having to be postponed, even, you know, staff layoffs, which is really sad to hear. So really, from each of your perspectives, how optimistic are you about the kind of state of innovation in the energy sector in Europe now, and kind of maybe looking a little bit forward into the future, maybe the next sort of 5 years? So Ask, you want to kick us off?
Yes. So Heather, I'm going to be honest, I'm actually a bit pessimistic in some ways, at least. And I think it's healthy to be that. So I think the potential is definitely here, right? I mean, the growth layer, the ideas that are aspiring are interesting. There is a lot of potential. There's a lot of both smaller companies popping up that have good ideas. There's also bigger companies that actually wanting to make a change. What we should be aware of is that we're trying to make a structural change of our society, right? We're still living in a society that's founded on fossil fuels, basically, whether we like it or not. And it's a huge transition that we are moving towards. And I think there's a reluctance in Europe, or a tendency to grasp the technologies that we know today. And that's good. We need those, but we also need more than that, is evident. So we need to be less risk averse, I think. And obviously something like the COVID crisis doesn't help in taking more risks, or in being more long-sighted, I would say, because I don't think it's risky. I think it's just what we need to do. I think the risk of not doing anything is much bigger. And then sometimes we need a more global perspective as well. I mean, we've been looking a lot at, say, Southeast Asia, where we are looking at a major increase in population, and people, as they get richer, they want electricity and heating like everybody else, right? The standard just grows, and the energy demands actually increase. So the global challenge is so much bigger than it is in Europe. While in Europe, we can do a lot with efficiency and transitions. Actually, I mean, something as simple as isolating our houses or insulating our houses better. But if you go to Southeast Asia, they might start by having heating in those houses, right? And that's where the energy growth comes from. So there's a huge transition, and we should be aware of the scale of that, basically, how big a transition we need to make. I am optimistic in the sense that some of the very big companies are actually starting to take charge of some of these things. Even oil companies stating that they want to be carbon free in 2050s. So I think it might be our politicians who are lacking behind at the moment.
Rune, would you like to add to that? Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I would actually say I'm probably the opposite of Ask. Very optimistic. I think, and maybe even too optimistic. But yeah, I think there's of course this dual scenario. You could say there's the way which I believe in. I think where we use also this crisis as the COVID-19 crisis in actually turning those investments into the green transition. And we already start to see that, at least on a European level, that some of these funding means are being pushed into green transition developments. And also on a Danish level as well, we've seen a big push here from the government, and especially also from the industry. I think which is really interesting perspective. I mean, we have our company have been in this energy field the last 10 years, and we experienced that. Of course, the industry are willing to look the green way, so to say. But I think it's really the last couple of years that you actually start to see that it's also become a driver. It becomes like not only looking on the bottom line of the numbers, but you're also looking on this, like the green business case of things. Also because they start to make sense, as you don't need all those subsidies anymore of all the, depending on the side, of course, if it's solar and wind, but things can start to run a little bit more automatically. So you also start to see like big funding organs as the pension fundings are suddenly starting to be willing in taking that risk. I think also of pushing the development. And then if you see Denmark as an example, then these pension funds say that they want to invest in some of this power to X, for instance, which is it's quite new that they want to look into these new things, and also some of these power islands or like these power hubs in the North Sea. So I think that's a quite interesting sign that where it's sort of, as Ask is saying, with the politicians, they're kind of lagging behind because they are putting up these flags as saying, okay, we want these energy islands, for instance, taking that as a case. But actually, it is the industry and it's the private sector that is pushing. The solutions are already there. So the politicians are actually not that visionary in what they're saying. They need to be a little bit more visionary, I think. So that would be my take into it, and that's also, I think, what we experience from our own field as designers, actually, that the last couple of months since this lockdown, there's actually been maybe an increased need for, you could say, the competences that we have in looking into the future, because with the European Green Deal, we're looking 30 years into the future, or 10 and 30 years, and the politicians need some sort of, you could say, images or visions of how are these situations or scenarios looking like. How do we still maintain the jobs which they are really interested in, and so on, but also how do you see all these things being merged together, and so on. And I think that's especially like from our own field as designers and architects, also as backgrounds. I think that's where we have some competences to bring in play in this green transition. So I would say I'm definitely very optimistic in that way, but I think again it needs to happen in the right way, because I think we can definitely get the wrong effect into things, that we get a pull back instead of a push forward. And maybe in addition to that, I think there's another interesting thing maybe happening to the green transition, that you see these developing countries, as Ask is also mentioning, where Africa is also starting to be put on the map suddenly, right? They also need to go into sort of a green transition, or at least energy scale up, and where it's important that also happens in the right way. So I think there's some other interesting areas that start to occur around the globe that would definitely also feed into how the European green transition will happen. So yeah.
Great, interesting. Because we always think it's more that the countries are looking to Europe to see what Europe's doing, what mistakes Europe's doing. But so it's quite interesting to actually think there is a sort of two-way development going on, which is really great. Ask Rune, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your insights, and sort of sharing and telling us about your technology and the project, and obviously the key role that collaboration can play in making, you know, these great ideas a success. And obviously I wish you great success with the project. Do let us know how things progress. We'd really love to know. Thanks very much.
Sure, thank you.